Also going to do a simple rigging demonstration today and an exercise. And then Wednesday we're just going to have an open lab so you guys can work on your project stuff and I can come in there and talk to you about things or work through some problems with you. All right, moving on a little bit. 3 current events today. This is so good. See, this is when I have time off. I have nothing to do other than plumbing at my mother's house. So I go and look at different things and I find all these cool things. This is actually a little bit of an older one, but Moana. Yeah, I know it's Disney again. But Moana does some of the coolest things with lighting here. Water is one of the really tough things to create. And the background water is pretty good, the wave is pretty good. This whole thing where the water kind of takes on a life of its own in the movie is a bit bizarre. But they actually came up with some software to do this. And Moana has some great lighting in it. So this is a kind of interesting article here. I mean, here's the team. And of course, they all got to have pretty much everybody Hawaiian shirts because they're working on Hawaiian film. But they've got some of the big pictures up here. They've got some storyboard images on the side as well. Here's kind of a flow diagram they're actually putting together to show how they're going to put the movie together. So, I don't want that. But here's kind of the steps, right? They do the basic animation and they start to bring in the water. Water is challenging. And none of these companies will just use like Maya out of the box with the water that's got there, even though it's good. This is crazy. 50 to 100 million particles, but we knew we had to do hundreds of millions or maybe billions of particles for the big cresting wave. So they did distributed computing. One of the things you can do with Maya is you can create these render farms and you can use a whole bunch of machines to render things together. This is a really kind of a cool link. You might want to take note of this one for yourself just for future stuff. Best websites and online tools for learning animation. And I read this article and it is quite decent. No, I don't want to watch your little video right now. But it talks about some of the different tools that are out there. Some of them we created in this class. The art department does some of these things, like they're working on a class with Toon Boom. But there's no shortage of tools that are out here that can be used for things. But here's each product that's out there and where you can go learn about it. Some, unfortunately, got to pay for. Crazy Talk is a very interesting product. Linda's got some good stuff, but not that much actually on Maya. Pluralsight is another popular one. So you can look that one over at your leisure. Seriously, one of the best places is just to start looking at YouTube videos and doing some searches and finding what's out there. You'll find a whole bunch of things like Linda on YouTube, and it'll say you can't view this content unless you have a membership, but it gets you a start. The reason I got this link here is because this is quite cool. Surprisingly, it has nothing to do with Disney. This is about a cruise line that wants to make their ship longer. So the ship line is the Silver Sea, and they want to lengthen the ship. And so they came up with an animation here to do this. And here's a picture of it in dry dock. They sliced it. And then they're going to put in another 47 or 49 foot section in it. But they wanted to show people what was going on, how this was going to work. Now, I don't know, what do you think about that? Would you go on the initial cruise right after they get done with that? Because, you know, they missed a few welds in here. It's just like, I don't know. Let me fire this video up, because it's really short, but it's a pretty good use of animation. They didn't spend a lot of time putting colors on this. So, pretty simple animation, really. There's nothing that complicated to that thing. There's no colors, there's no textures. They don't even try to create any water or show the water outside the dry dock or anything like that. But it works. It's really effective. I mean, if you've got, this company and you're trying to show it to a bunch of investors at the annual meeting or something like that, that really helps rather than discussing how, we're going to just basically cut the boat in half, pull it apart, and put a new section in there. So that's a pretty cool use of animation. When I was a lot younger and foolisher than I am today, I had a buddy who had a really fast late 60s muscle car, and he was all excited about it, so he took me out for a ride, and we're driving all over the place, and he just beating his car up. I mean, it was a couple of times we went over some hills, it was up in the air. And we get all done, and he takes me outside, and he says, look at it, see, it was actually two different bodies. They welded it together here after the ride. I'm like, what? Kind of a death trap am I riding in? So, all right. Lots of uses for animation out there. All right, we did the test review. Today I'm going to talk just briefly. Really? There we go. Briefly about rigging. And if you ever see credits on a movie, like one of the Marvel films or anything that's got a lot of CG in it, character setup artist is the title you'll see for people who do rigging all the time. Because remember, nobody in the industry, unless it's you or I just doing a complete project by ourselves, does everything. You've got people that specialize in lighting, you've got people that specialize in rigging, people that specialize in textures. So character setup is the task, and a character setup artist is the person that usually does this kind of stuff. All right, so with rigging, it's pretty simple. You're basically, if you think of the human body, it's the easiest way to picture this thing. You're putting in bones inside of the body. So if you've just got this this pool of human flesh and you want it to stand up, you got to give it a skeleton, right? So you create these things, and they don't look very much like human bones. There's two bones in the picture there, the top one, and then that goes to a joint, and then it kicks up the bottom one, which is a little bit bigger. There's another joint on the end of that one. And you attach these things together. And usually what they do is they start right in the middle of the body, and they extend down to the legs and up to the chest and then out to the arms. And it depends on what you're trying to do, whether you go much beyond that. So if I go back to the other picture, you'll see this. The wider part is the top of it. It's the closest to the center. The narrower part is the bottom thing. So if you go like in this picture, that would maybe be like the shoulder up at the top, goes narrower than the elbow, then down to the wrist, or something like that. So they're always positioned that way. You don't do it the other way around. And I got to tell you, rigging is one of the more complicated things that's out there to do. It's a challenge. Anybody remember in 210 when we did the little bendy guy, the kind of used car dealerships tube? Remember that? Okay, thank you. least one person nodded. Whew. Thought I dreamt that up. All right, so you can move bones around, and you're going to see some of the controls. So the trick is there's this hierarchy. I mentioned you usually start in like the chest area, the body, the stomach, the torso, and then from there you go out and down to the limbs. So if I move like a hip bone, the knee and the foot go with it usually. If I move the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist, go on. Lots of times you get away with not doing like all 5 digits or something like that. It's actually one of the reasons an awful lot of cartoon characters have only 4 fingers rather than 5. It's just because of the ease of animation. All right, so you're going to see the same rotate tool where you can go in any of the 3 axes, X, Y, or Z, to move these things around. And then you can use this thing called IK joints, inverse kinetics. I'll show you this for a second. More bones, more complexity, more time, more chances to screw it up, but it's going to potentially look a lot more realistic and lifelike. It's going to take longer to render as well. One of the things that was genius about Baymax here was that because it's this goofy thing, they didn't have to do a lot with. Those fingers, I don't think they ever moved very much at all. Nothing to do with the feet. So they basically had a knee joint, maybe a hip joint, and a shoulder and elbow, and then the head. But, you know, you couldn't ask for a simpler design than that. All right, let me show you something here. I'm going to fire up Maya. If I don't already have it going. I don't. Wow. Blank screen. All right, file. I always try to rush Maya, but it doesn't pay. It has a mind of its own. It will do things when it's ready. All right, so if I open, let me go out here. Documents. All right, that black guy. All right. This is a fairly common thing. You're going to see this in the art department a lot. They got these little dudes that are posed on different things you can practice with drawing and stuff. But this is a fairly simple thing. But right now there's no bone structure in here. If I move things, like if I click on these arrows here, I can move things around, but it's the whole creature all moving around in one spot, okay? So that's not too exciting. So what I want to do is I want to add some internal bone structure to this thing. So let me select everything here. And then if you go under here, there's this wonderful tool called Quick Rig Tool. Now if you remember what we did in 210, we created that little advertising dude that bended back and forth, right? You had to add a bone, then you had to extrude it, add another bone, connect them all up. You're going to love this part of Maya. This is one of the things where Maya excels. So you click on Quick Rig Tool here. And then this is your favorite button in the whole wide world right here called Auto Rig. So what happens is it takes just a smidgen of time here, depending on how fast your machine is, to come up with the rigging. Boom, done. It's now added the internal structure to this thing. And there's what it looks like on the inside. So I didn't have to do any of that. It just did it for me, which is nice. okay? That's really great. It doesn't work on much besides bipeds, so people with 2 arms and 2 legs, okay? Works really great on that. Doesn't work so well on 4-legged beasties or anything else. But for this, it's pretty cool. So let me zoom in a little bit on this thing. I'll try to move it around a little bit so we can see things. But if you look at this now, it's added the bones in here. You can kind of see the pale green, hopefully, in here. And it's added some controls already. So what I can do is I can click on this red one here, and I've got the handle, so I can move this thing left or right, back or forth. I can grab the head and do that. So I could pose this character. And that's all done for me automatically. A single arm, it moves everything downstream from that arm. So the elbow, everything else. This one doesn't have any controls right by there, but it has a little control here on the wrist, so I can do a few things like this. And depending on how many controls I have and how often I take and put markers on my animation, I can get it to look fairly smooth. There's a red box here around the waist. I can do that one, which is really quite powerful. In fact, if I spin this thing around, you'll see it from the other side. And you got controls down here on the ankle as well, so you can move a foot around, so you could do like a walking simulation. But that's all just auto rig. I didn't do anything fancier than that. I just found this model. It comes without any innards. You give it the innards. Don't you love that kind of tech talk? Question?
Does it have automatic constraints so you can't bend the knee backwards?
No. Unfortunately, I don't believe this one does. I think you can do some... Well, no, you can't bend this. You can't bend it backwards. You can... That's not bad, actually. I think the elbow is... Or, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's another one we're going to look at, and that one doesn't have it. Yeah, this one does. So that's pretty good. It certainly gets you a lot closer than starting with one bone right down the center and rigging it out from there. All right. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, now here's another thing. We got a new one out here. Let me get this thing going. This is where you guys have some fun. I have, under Blackboard, week 7, there is this guy, blockguy.ma for Maya ASCII. And what I want you to do is to select this thing, to color it, give them some nice colors. Come in here, give them whatever colors you want. You can give them some texture if you wanted to. Pick your favorite color. And then I want you to do the auto rigging piece to get used to this thing. So what you would do is come up here where this little dude is, up in the upper right corner there, click on this, quick rig tool, auto rig. And it's going to come back and it's going to do things. Selected one mesh. Well, that would make sense. I have to select this guy first. And then it'll be rigged, but this one's a little more obscure. This one's not as nice as that wooden block one. So this guy, when I rig him, came up with basically the same structure, but the controls on this one are a little bit funky. So if I select and move this guy around a little bit, you can do some weird things with this shoulder, and you'll start to see some like very painful looking compound fractures. Like that's just wrong right there, okay? Now, one of the things that happens is, if you notice that the bone is actually outside of the material itself, outside of the structure. That's not necessarily a problem if you're using it for control, because when you render this, you're going to just see the blue part as well. You're not going to see the bone sticking out of that area. But you could certainly do this better than what Auto Rig did in this case. You've got these joints all over the place. You can do some different things. Yeah, but this one, see, that's just wrong. That's a skiing accident right there.